1 year ago. 32 teams made the most important decisions of their offseason. Some of those decisions look brilliant today. Some of them look questionable. And some of them are still genuinely too early to call. We are 1 year into the 2025 NFL draft class. And in today's video, we are grading every first round selection from pick 17 through pick 32. If you are wondering about picks 1 through 16, that video went up last week, and I will link it at the end of today's video. We are going in reverse order, which means we are starting with the Chiefs' selection of Josh Simmons at 32 overall, and finishing with the Bengals pick a pass rusher, Shamar Stewart, at 17. A couple of quick ground rules before we get into it. These grades are based on production, availability, and how each player has performed relative to where they were drafted. We are not going to retroactively say a team should have taken a different player. We are evaluating what each team actually got from the pick they made. That is the only fair way to do this. Now, like the video, before we dive in, a football will appear when you do, and let's get into it. Josh Simmons was the 32nd and final pick of the first round, and I want to say something about this selection that I do not think gets said enough. I genuinely believe that if Josh Simmons plays out the full 2024 season at Ohio State and never tears his patellar tendon, he is a top 5 pick in this draft. He might be a Patriot. He might be something else entirely, but he does not fall to 32. The injury changed everything about his draft stock, and the Chiefs got a player who, by every indication, looks like a franchise left tackle at the back end of the first round. In his rookie year, Simmons played 526 snaps, missed a stretch midseason for personal reasons, and then had his year cut short by a wrist injury in Week 13 against the Cowboys. But in the time he was on the field, he looked like the real deal, composed, athletic, technically sound. He looked like a guy who is going to anchor that left side for the next decade. I remember watching him in some of those games thinking there is absolutely no way this player was available at pick 32, and Kansas City got away with something here. And 1 year later, this is a clear A+. Jihad Campbell was the Eagles' first-round selection, and I want to start with something I said during the draft process, purely from a talent standpoint and setting aside positional value for a moment. I thought Campbell was a top 5 player in this entire class. He is a genuinely exceptional football player, and his rookie season showed that in flashes, particularly in coverage, where he demonstrated the kind of instincts and athleticism that make scouts use the word special. Now, there were moments where he got moved around in the run game more than you would want, which is pretty common for a young linebacker still learning to diagnose blocking schemes at the NFL level. But what limited his impact most in 2025 was a return of Nakobe Dean from injury. Once Dean came back, there was a 7-game stretch where Campbell was playing fewer than 40 snaps per game, and that naturally limits what his numbers look like at season's end. The talent is there. The foundation is there. And I think when we revisit this pick in 2 or 3 years, this is going to look like an easy A+. But for now, 1 year in, this is an A-. Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky was Buffalo's first-round corner, and his rookie year got off to a difficult start when he suffered an LCL sprain during a preseason practice that delayed his NFL debut all the way until Week 8 against Carolina. He finished the year having played in 11 games, which is a limited sample, but still enough to form some impressions. And the best way I can describe what Hairston showed in his rookie year is exactly what you would hope for from a first-round corner. Some genuinely encouraging plays mixed with some real learning moments, which is completely normal for a young corner getting his feet under him. He picked off 2 passes in his first 3 career games, one against Kansas City and one against Miami, which is a fantastic way to introduce yourself to the NFL. But in that same Dolphins game where he got the interception, he also allowed a touchdown to Jalen Waddle, and I do not think anyone should hold that against him. Waddle is one of the better receivers in the league at creating separation, and this was Harrison's 3rd career start. He played 348 snaps on the season, which is not a massive sample, and veteran Tre'Davious White was getting snaps over him at times. Um, um, I think the ceiling here is a solid starting corner, and I think he gets there 1 year later. This is a B minus. Josh Connerly Jr. was the Commanders' first-round offensive tackle, and Washington only had 5 picks in the entire 2025 draft. So getting value out of each one was critical. I liked this selection when it was made, and I still like it now. Connerly had one of the more brutal introductions to the NFL that an offensive tackle could have. His first 2 games were against the Giants pass rush, which includes Brian Burns and Abdul Carter. And then the Packers and Micah Parsons on a short week. Parsons got him a few times in that second game, and he got some attention, but I want to be very direct. Parsons is a generational talent, and Connerly was a 21-year-old in his second career start. That result does not tell you much about who Connerly is going to be. What was more telling was watching him improve week over week as the season progressed. He logged over 1,000 snaps in a year where the Commanders were decimated by injuries, and you could see him getting more comfortable and more consistent as time went on. He allowed 11 pressures in the first 2 games and then settled in. That trajectory is what you want to see. 1 year later, this is a B minus with significant room to move up. Tyleik Williams was Detroit's first-round pick, and I think context is the most important word when evaluating this selection. Williams is a 330-pound interior defensive tackle built to stop the run. He is not Aaron Donald. He is not a pass rushing specialist. He is a powerful, space-eating presence who makes the defense around him better, and the Lions did not ask him to be anything other than that as a rookie. He played 446 snaps on the year, which is a reasonable workload for a player in that role on a defensive line with significant depth. 19 pressures, 18 total tackles, 1 sack. Those numbers do not jump off the page. But watch the tape in the second half of the season when Williams started to find his footing, and you will notice the Lions' run defense became noticeably sturdier in a way that directly correlates to his presence. Interior defensive tackles who anchor the run game are not always flashy, but they are valuable. 1 year later, this is a C plus with the expectation that it goes up. Malachi Starks was the Ravens' first-round safety, and when this pick was announced, I thought it was a classic Ravens move, finding a legitimate first-round talent who somehow slid to 27 and pouncing on him without hesitation. Starks was a really good safety prospect coming out of Georgia, and Baltimore got him at a significant discount relative to his talent level. So now the beginning of his rookie season was rocky, and Ravens fans were understandably concerned for a stretch. But then came the Miami game where he picked off his first career pass, and you could see something click. The things I love about Starks fit perfectly with what the Ravens want from their players. He is physical. He is not afraid to stick his face in on run support, and he plays with a toughness that the organization values. He missed 13% of his tackle attempts in year 1, which is an area that needs to improve. He was also 21 years old for much of the season and was playing in a defense under a coordinator whose play calling left a lot to be desired. He was not set up for maximum success, but the back half of the season gave me real confidence in what he can become. 1 year later, this is a B plus. James Pierce Jr. Was Atlanta's first-round pass rusher, and I have been honest about this on the channel before. I did not like the trade-up cost when the Falcons made this move. You know, giving up a future first-round pick to move up for any player is a significant commitment, and I thought there was a real chance that pick was going to be painful given where Atlanta was as an organization. But I also said I would own it when I was wrong, and on the question of James Pierce's individual production and impact, I was wrong. This pick has been outstanding. Pierce finished his rookie year with 45 total pressures, which ranked second in the entire class behind only Abdul Carter at third overall. He had 10 and a half sacks. He had 16 quarterback hits, and he turned 22 years old in October. The Falcons had not had a legitimate pass rusher in years, and when you combine Pierce with Jalen Walker and Xavier Watts from the same draft class, Atlanta suddenly has one of the better young defensive cores in the NFC. The process of trading up still makes me slightly uncomfortable in retrospect, but the result speaks for itself. 1 year later, James Pierce is an A+. Jackson Dart was the Giants' first-round quarterback, and when this pick was made, I was genuinely excited for Dart. He earned this moment. My one concern heading into his rookie season was the Brian Daboll situation. Daboll was on the hot seat entering 2025, and I worried that if the team struggled, a young quarterback could end up caught in a coaching change just as he was starting to find his footing. That concern was not unfounded. Daboll was fired during the season, but here's the thing. Dart was good enough that it did not matter. He threw 15 touchdowns against 5 interceptions. He added 487 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns on the ground, 25 total touchdowns in 14 games with a supporting cast that was dealing with significant injuries. Malik Neighbors tore his ACL. Cam Scatabo also missed time. I think we are genuinely just scratching the surface of what Jackson Dart can do. He looks like a franchise quarterback. 1 year later, this is an A+. Donovan Jackson was Minnesota's first-round offensive lineman, and I like this pick when it was made for a specific reason. He had guard and tackle versatility coming out of Ohio State, where he actually stepped in to replace Josh Simmons when Simmons went down in 2024. Fortunately, the Vikings kept Jackson at guard in his rookie year rather than asking him to play tackle, and that was the right call. The most remarkable part of his 2025 season is something that did not come out publicly until after the year ended. Jackson played most of the season with a broken wrist, competing in a hand cast for extended stretches. He only allowed 2 sacks across nearly 500 pass blocking attempts under those circumstances. So that kind of toughness and production in adverse conditions tells you a lot about who this player is. The Vikings had a brutal year at quarterback, which masked a lot of what their offensive line actually did well. Jackson was one of the bright spots. 1 year later, this is a B+. Matthew Golden was Green Bay's first-round receiver, the first wideout the Packers have taken in the first round since Javon Walker back in 2002, which tells you how long they went between swings at the position. Statistically, his rookie year was underwhelming, 361 receiving yards, no regular season touchdowns. He did show out in the wild card round against the Bears with 84 yards and a score, which at least demonstrates he can perform in a big moment. But here is my honest pushback on the situation surrounding Golden, and it has more to do with Matt LaFleur than with Golden himself. 44 targets over the course of a full NFL season for your first-round receivers is simply not acceptable asset allocation. You do not use a first-round pick on a skill position player and then barely involve him in the offense for 16 games. Luther Burden was a prospect I rated higher than Golden coming out of the draft, and I will stand by that evaluation, but I do not think Golden is destined to be a bust. I think this is a different conversation in 12 months. For now, 1 year later, this is a C. Omarion Hampton was the second running back taken in the first round of the 2025 draft selected by the Chargers, and grading this pick requires a little patience because the sample is complicated. Hampton only played 9 games due to an ankle injury suffered in Week 5 against Washington. In those 9 games, he had 545 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, and nearly 200 receiving yards. If you project those numbers across a full 17-game season, you are looking at close to 1,400 total yards and 10 touchdowns, which is a genuinely impressive rookie year for a back, taken at 22nd overall. And the Chargers' offensive line was also dealing with significant injury issues throughout the season, which made life harder for Hampton than it needed to be. So I think the talent here is real. If you play dynasty fantasy football and can acquire him, I think the value is significant 1 year later. And accounting for the injury context, this is an A minus. Derek Harmon was Pittsburgh's first-round defensive lineman, and if you are looking purely at his box score numbers, 27 tackles, 5 quarterback hits, 1 tackle for loss in 12 games, you might conclude this was a quiet, unspectacular rookie year. And statistically, that is accurate. But here's the thing about Harmon that I think tells the real story. Watch what happened to the Steelers' run defense in the 5 games he missed. Buffalo and Baltimore each ran for over 200 yards during that stretch. The defense looked entirely different without him. A defensive lineman who makes that kind of structural difference in his rookie year, who makes the entire unit noticeably worse when he is not on the field, is exactly the kind of player you are hoping for when you spend a first-round pick on the interior. He also had 22 pressures on the season, which ranked 11th in the entire class. With Cam Hayward's future uncertain, the presence of Harmon alongside Keanu Benton gives the Steelers a legitimate foundation up front 1 year later. This is a B+. Jada Barron was Denver's first-round corner, and this one genuinely requires context to evaluate fairly. He played only 335 total snaps in his rookie year, had 1 interception, and was primarily deployed as a slot corner rather than an outside boundary corner. The Broncos and Sean Payton have a track record of bringing their young players along deliberately. Bo Nix is the obvious example of a player who was developed carefully before being turned loose, and Barron fits that same philosophy. He was not drafted to win Defensive Player of the Year in his rookie season. He was drafted to develop within a system, to learn from veterans, and to eventually grow into a starting role. The complication going forward is how his role fits alongside Jaquan McMillan, which is a fair question. But based on what I saw when Barron was on the field, I thought he was fine. I will be honest, I would prefer to call this one incomplete, given the snap count was essentially 0 for most of his games. But with the information available 1 year later, this is a B. Emeka Egbuka was Tampa Bay's first-round receiver and the second wideout taken in the entire class. And the first 9 games of his rookie career were genuinely electric. He had 677 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns in the first half of the season. At that pace, he was on track for over 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns. Baker Mayfield was getting MVP buzz, and the Buccaneers were being discussed as a legitimate NFC title contender. Egbuka had a 163-yard game in Seattle in Week 5. Everything was pointing up. And then the final 8 games happened. 23 catches on 53 targets, 261 yards, 0 touchdowns, a catch rate of 45% over the closing stretch of the regular season. That is a sharp fall off, and some of it can be attributed to Mayfield playing through health issues down the stretch. But not all of it. For a receiver to go from that level of production to essentially invisible over an 8-game span raises real questions about consistency and about what defenses were able to take away once they had a full half season of tape. I still like Egbuka's talent. I think he will be a good player in this league for a long time. But the second half of 2025 left some questions that need to be answered in year 2. 1 year later, this is an A. Gray Zabel was Seattle's first-round interior offensive lineman, and this is a pick I loved when it was made and love even more now. The Seahawks have been a legitimately good football team for the better part of 15 years, and one of the things that has consistently limited their ceiling is the absence of truly elite offensive line play. Drafting Zabel was an acknowledgement of that and commitment to fixing it. For a guard who played his college football at North Dakota State, making the transition to the NFL interior where The bodies are bigger and faster, and the playbook is 10 times more complex. Zabel made it look almost routine. He is just over 300 pounds, which is on the lighter side for an NFL guard, and he held up anyway. So he plays with intelligence, he plays with leverage, and he plays with a physicality that translates. The Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl, and Zabel was a foundational piece of why their offensive line functioned the way it did this season. John Schneider had an outstanding draft in 2025, and this pick was a highlight. 1 year later, this is an A+. Shamar Stewart was the Bengals' first-round pass rusher, and I want to be fair here because there is a lot of context that needs to accompany this grade. Stewart tore his PCL during the season, came back 7 weeks later, and was dealing with the aftermath of a significant contract dispute that kept him away from organized team activities and made him the last first-round pick of this class to sign his rookie deal. None of that is a recipe for a productive rookie year. He finished with 13 pressures in 8 games and 11 total tackles, which is underwhelming, even accounting for the missed time. And I will be honest, coming into the draft process, I was lower on Stewart than the consensus. I thought he was a project player who tested extraordinarily well at the combine, but did not play consistently at the level those athletic markers suggested he should. I did not think he was undraftable by any means. I just was not convinced he was a top 20 pick. His rookie year did not change that assessment. But I also think the injury and the contract situation made it nearly impossible to evaluate him fairly. He just turned 22 in November. The talent is there if he develops. The results in 2025 were not. 1 year later, as much as the situation complicates the grade, this is an F. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you liked it, please subscribe and hit the like button. A football will appear, and we are closing in on a big subscriber milestone on this channel that means a lot to everyone here at Andy Reid Universe. Let me know in the comments which grades you agree with and which ones you think I got wrong. I always read those. Till next time, please be safe and have a great day.